Here we are in Warburton in Victoria. One of the most anticipated projects, for many, many years. We're involved way back in 2013 when we actually came in and had a look at this site. And I tell you what, there's nothing like it here in Australia. Just the natural features here are really spectacular. It's really amazing. So next few months we're starting to walk all over the hills and start designing everything. Hopefully we're going to have people riding by the end of 2020.
We're undertaking Aboriginal and historic surveys for the trails, and my role is to deal with the historic side of it. So that's mainly looking at evidence of the early sawmilling, tramways, logging industries and gold mining that were the main things that were going on in here.
So I've been working with Wurundjeri on a cultural heritage management plan, so we're trying to recreate a little bit of the Aboriginal history for this area, and there's not a lot of it. So the Yarra River that flows all the way through Corandurk and towards where we are now is a pretty special site. There are a few scarred trees that are in the area, but there's likely to be occupation across here from many years that will come up as more investigation occurs. And it's something that both the community members and the larger area really take interest in. And Wurundjeri have a really strong presence out here as well, and are actually quite excited to be involved in the mountain bike trail project.
Well, we're in a beautiful mountain ash and stringy bark forest. It's mostly regrowth from the last fires that came through here. But in the turn of the century, the 1890s, 1910s, it was an area that was very extensively logged for building timber. Small tramways were run into the bush, and horse-drawn trolleys are used to pull out the logs, and then sawmills were situated all over the forest to cut them up. Prior to that, in the 1860s and 70s, there was gold mining through here, and it wasn't terribly successful apart from down the bottom of the gully in Yankee Jim Creek. But the miners searched everywhere, and so we find these little exploration pits where they're digging, just trying to see if they can find any reef gold. Well, we're in the middle of the cemetery reserve, and we understand that there were a number of burials here in the 19th century, and then the cemetery was abandoned. So we've been looking around to try and see if we can see some feature of that, but the forestry growth has been so successful that it now looks an almost entirely natural landscape. But there still is the chance that some features might show up. We're under this tree fern that's just an odd one because it's sitting on a very dry northwest facing ridge in a location where they generally don't grow. There's none other around here for hundreds of metres. And it's possible that it's either been planted at some stage or has colonised a damp spot, and something like a gravesite could be the sort of place that would support a tree fern in this area.
It's essentially the mountain backdrop to Melbourne is easy access to big mountains with wet forest. It's also the water catchments. The water that is produced, that comes out of the forest, not only supports the people of Melbourne, but supports all this horticulture. So cherries to raspberries to Brussels sprouts, etc. It's a little bit beyond ecology, indigenous ecology, but that is the context. It's critical to the city of Melbourne, and it's actually really convenient for people to come out to appreciate. So the first step we did is in the design process. We've had several steps of design. We had desktop review. We had architects and trail professionals look at where the optimum path would be. Then we looked at the records kept by there's a comprehensive database of flora and fauna records kept by the state government. So that was looked at. The trail was tweaked and changed a bit in response to some of those values. Then my practical ecology staff, and partly myself, walked the entire route and identified issues that weren't recorded on databases and maps and so on. And we modified the trail even further after that. So we've had all these stages of refinement, and that's really important for any project. A lot of people come forward and said that trails that have previously been constructed have had problems with maintenance or with protection of environmental values. So the council is working on a governance model of non-profit trust made up of community members and of the different representatives of the different land management authorities that will be where the trails will go. predominantly Parks Victoria and Del Whip as state forest managers, and the governance model will be just as important. The nature of infrastructure demands ongoing management of environmental impacts. Looking after the environment, and it's not just about the construction process and making sure we get that right, but making sure we get ongoing governance correct. There's also limitations of where to put the trail on Mount Donaboang because of constraints of roads, things like the leadbeater's possums, nest boxes and habitat trees. So for the most part, we've been able to keep the trail well away from known nesting habitat. But also, we've been able to design the trail to protect the components of the habitat that leadbeater's possums need. They need that mid-story vegetation, tall tea tree and silver wattles, and we've intentionally designed the trail to always maintain that layer of middle-story trees in the forest, because that's what's most important. Of course, there's specific sites. If you're specifically interested in different flora or different fauna, there'll be specific places to stop, like Mount Donaboang is easy to get to from Warburton and is interesting any time of the year. You can go up in the snow or you can go up in the summertime and basically see alpine vegetation, which is quite unique. But probably what would be more interesting for people is, as mountain bikes are a roll down a mountain kind of thing, is to see the changes that elevation brings. If it's on the south side of the valley, on the north facing slopes, it'll be high and dry, and then as you come down the mountain, it will get damper and wetter, and you'll get nearer to the river and see quite different vegetation. But it's particularly on the south-facing slopes, on the sheltered slopes of Mount Donaboang in particular, where one of the trails is planned, be able to go from alpine ash forest through mountain ash forest, through cool temperate rainforest, and then ending up down on the Yarra River around Warburton. And that in itself will probably be quite an amazing experience for people, I believe. So we're actually at a really good point. We've got a few internationally recognized companies based in Australia who are building trails here and around the world. And mountain bike trails can possibly even be better than foot trails. Now, with a walking trail for foot traffic, you want it mostly even. Mountain bike trails, you actually want them up and down. And so you can take advantage of a little stream and actually put little hills and then a bridge so that the impact is really kept off. And even with the dips in mountain bike trails, that's where sedimentation can be kept and limited to the dips. And you'll find that mountain bike trails have more opportunity for environmental protection, in my view, after I've looked at them, than some of the more typical foot trails that are through wilderness areas. I've also witnessed some of the builders and know from some of the environmental impacts, trail builders are really good nowadays. They stay right on the footprint, and they only have to get out of the trail footprint at strategic places where they have permission to, where there's already disturbance. So the trail builders that are in the market are actually very environmentally sensitive, and that helps a great deal as well. And they're also very good at putting good infrastructure in that has a sensitive footprint in the construction phase and over time. So what's being sorted out is actually some pretty standard materials that are in component blocks. So if you need a longer bridge, you just put you hook 2 or 3 blocks together. Usually for a narrow stream, you might only need a little one, and then you use on-site rocks and so on. I've got great respect, having seen how they operate in several circumstances with the trail builders. They take their job very seriously.
Such a rad, cool little place, Imagine finishing a ride in the mountains around Warburton and finishing it right here on the Yarra River with platypus and kangaroos and amazing scenery, I don't think you're going to get anything better than this.